Okay, I think we're almost live.
Yeah, sure. In my machine that we are live.
Oh, great. Well, I don't see us live, honestly. I don't know why. Oh, yes, we're definitely live. So, hello to everyone. Welcome to another great interview of 2 weeks of databases. This time we have the team of Volga data platform. The greatest members of the team, actually. And so, first of all, I want to say that it is a pleasure to have them because I've first met Divya at the meetup we organized in London, so London Open Source Databases meetup. She told me about this great project. I was curious from the beginning, and finally I had the opportunity to interview them. So, hi, Narain and Divya.
Hello.
First of all, in which you are in London, right?
Yeah.
Currently? Okay, great. So I will not ask you how the situation is in London because I also live there and I know. So do you want to start maybe by talking a bit about yourself and your background and maybe say some words about Vonage, the company where you're working? Maybe Narain wants to start?
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm working for Vonage. So our primary focus is the data platform that you talked about. I guess we will talk more about it in the course of the interview. And so before this, I worked at a few of the gaming companies, namely Disney and King. So I have some experiences with dealing with databases and dealing with multiple points of presence. And what we're doing in this platform is from some of the experiences that I had in the past in these kind of things.
So I'm Divya. I also work at Vonage. So me and Narain, we both are working on this platform, which was basically to handle some problems which we are facing in Vonage. The problems of data, how to move the data from here to there, and similar to this. Something about Vonage is we are primarily in cloud communication. So examples of some of our services can be sending SMSs, verifications, if you have seen those messages where you say OTP and all these things, verification, those kind of things. We also have VDC, which is video platform services. So mainly in communication part, cloud communication. I used before Vonage, I used to work in back in India. So I worked for Gojek. Um, it's kind of Uber of Southeast Asia, primarily transportation services. And then I moved to London to work for Vonage.
Okay, that's great. I have only one small request for Divya. If you could maybe talk a bit closer to the microphone because the audio is not great. Yeah, it's much better. So, do you maybe Narain first, but as you prefer? Do you want to talk us a bit about Volga and what it is actually?
Sure. So I can start and then Divya you can add. So what we want to do is, as Divya is saying, so Vonage is in this business where we provide APIs for people to come to enable people to communicate with one another. So one such example is like if you were to use, I'm sure most people would have used the Uber facility to pull up a cab to go somewhere. So now let's say the cab driver is late because of any reason, and you were to make a call to find out where the cab driver is, or if the cab driver were to call you to say, "Hey, you're not here." So we wouldn't want either of the parties in this exchange to know their phone numbers, but still for this communication to happen. So this is one of the kinds of communication, for example, that can be enabled by Vonage APIs. So similar kind of thing, if you were to check into an Airbnb rental, you want to exchange some message with the owner like something is not working and get it fixed, but you don't want to either expose your phone number or to know the phone number of the other person. So we can provide for some short-lived numbers on which you both can exchange these messages and still not lose your privacy. So that's the basic idea. So we provide APIs that developers can build on to create these kind of platforms. Okay.
Okay.
So to enable this, so we are present in multiple points of presence. So for example, we'll have two points of presence in the US, two in APAC, two in Europe, and so on. So the basic idea is that we provide you with a bouquet of APIs, one for exchanging SMS, one for doing voice calls, one for video call, and for something that we call verify, which is like if you ever log into a bank, sometimes you get this one-time authentication passwords on your phone, which you can then have to key in to enter the bank site, right? So these are the kinds of features that we provide. So we are present in multiple points of presence. So it's upwards of 6 to 10 across the globe. So the main idea is that you, as a customer of Vonage, create an account and you should be available in all these points of presence as soon as possible. So the simplest way to think about what we are doing is we provide a platform wherein you create, once you create this account in one of the DCs, in one of the points of presence, your data should be available in all the other points of presence. And all these APIs that I described to you, be it the SMS or the video calling or the verification abilities, they are all different microservices, each with their own databases attached to them. In many cases, they could be the same. In some cases, they could be different. So, for example, we have some services using MySQL, some using Couchbase, and so on. So our aim is to give, if you think about it, like a data fabric, which would be able to synchronize information between all these services or all their databases without them having to do any extra work. So that's the basic idea.
Okay, that's great. So basically, if I get it correctly, the main point is to distribute data and also in a selective way, so hiding certain information and doing this even through different technologies, right?
That's
Yeah.
true. So, for example, best way to put it in a database analogy would be like if you were to have a master and a slave MySQL, you would set up some kind of, let's say, asynchronous information.
Okay.
And now when you set up this asynchronous information, so what we provide is something like that. So if you, as long as you would write to the master, you would know with a certain replication lag that you would reach the slaves. So this is exactly what we would provide. But instead of the master and the slave being MySQL, it could be any database.
Okay, that's great. Do you want to add anything, Divya?
Yeah, I think Narain covered most of it. So that was the primary goal. Basically, this control data should be able to reach to all these services whichever required. And one way is this, and secondly, we also do like capturing this. So one way is that you can just move from database to database, and another thing you can just notify the services with. So we do both. So that was the primary goal for behind starting this data platform.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you, I mean, any of you, can you tell us a bit about how it works? So its architecture.
Yeah, sure, I can start.
Yeah.
So it's basically using, as I was saying, going back to the analogy of MySQL. So it works similar to how a MySQL replication client works, in the sense it connects to the bin log, parses the bin log, and emits that to a messaging system. So in the way we have built the system, it's pluggable. So right now we support Kafka, but going forward we could support other messaging systems. And so and then on the other end of the spectrum, then there would be a component which reads from Kafka and then converts it into the destination format, Couchbase if it is Couchbase, MySQL. In the case of MySQL, it would be just the SQL statements.
Okay, interesting. And okay, so basically, you mentioned that it can work with MySQL and with Couchbase. Does it also work with other technologies currently?
We have not really tested it with anything else, but because this is the spectrum of, we have just checked it with the spectrum of databases which we get to use in Vonage. But in theory, it should work with anything which provides a bin log, and as long as we can understand the bin log, we should be able to write a connector for that and be able to use it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically there are two sides of Volga. One is which reads the data from Binlog and one which puts the data to somewhere else. So the reading part is we support Binlog. So basically we only tested it with like RDS, Aurora, MySQL and MariaDB. So all of them work well. So maybe so this side we know. The other side is as we told that it's very the way we designed it is a plug and plug in. So basically right now we support Couchbase on the other side. So if you want to let's say play with some another database or cache, it's basically you just need to add one plug which can read and write to that. So that's how we as soon as we start moving to other databases, it will be easy to expand it.
Okay, I think it's really interesting. And if one wants to add a connector, which language should be used?
So at this point in time, the entire thing is in Java, but going forward, we might be able to support other languages too.
Okay, great. Is the whole project in Java?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, actually, I'm curious about one thing. Okay, you mentioned that basically you grab the changes from the binary log, but does it work if at some point a table is altered in MySQL? I mean, in the binary log, you will find the alter table statement, and what will happen at that point?
Sure. So at this point in time, we are not supporting schema migrations because it's a kind of dangerous thing. If somebody did, for example, a drop table by mistake, we wouldn't want that to be propagated to others. So in this kind of case, we just mark it in our schema and don't take an action on it. But if we wanted to, we could do it. So since you were talking to me earlier about your experience with Percona, if you know about this tool from GitHub called Ghost, which does schema migrations, that is something we would want to support, but we don't want to do something at this point in time because our DBAs don't want to support it at this point in time. But if we wanted to do it, something similar to Ghost is what we could do.
Okay, that's really great. I'm curious also about another thing. Would it work? I mean, if a proper connector is written, would it also be able to move data from, for example, a regular DBMS like MySQL and a columnar store?
Sure, it is possible. So ultimately, what we want to do, I would say, one of our ideas which we have not yet done, but we want to in the future, is to be able to do something like a materialized view, which means that reading the bin log changes and then make up a column for every kind of unique computations that you want to do, and then put them under a materialized view. So something similar to that. So if you are into academic papers and things like that, so there is this system called NIAD, which is also called the timely data flow. There are also startups which are doing something like this. So what we would want to do is ultimately something like that, where you can define your computations and say, this is the column that my computation depends on. For example, if you think about it like the following way, so let's say there is this API which is being called by Uber, and you want to track over time how many times are they making this call. So you could say, this is the computation that I want to do whenever there is a new entry in this table. So think about it as we have this platform, and then you can express that these computations need to happen on our platform. And then as these table changes and there's a new row which appears in this table, then this computation happens, and then you get like in-memory materialized view. So if you were to think about it at some level, this is like a columnar database where the one dimension of the column is time, the other dimension is the output of the function that you have described, which has acted on this row and did this computation and gave the result.
Okay, interesting. Do you have some kind of high availability in place in case
So
a machine goes down?
Sure. So we are currently running this system, as I said. So the whole idea is for this entire software stack to be plug and play. So right now we are hosting this within orchestration system called Nomad, which is which is similar to Kubernetes. So we would define within this system how many instances of our application should always be running. So if one were to, so for example, if you say 2 in every points of presence, and if one were to go down, it is its responsibility to bring it up again. So it is a containerized project, and we could set limits on how many instances should run in which points of presence at what time.
Uh, I think that is one part of it. So one point of availability is that the deployment where the application should be running. Another point of availability which we have within Volga itself is we also have an orchestrator itself in Volga, which means that so the way we define is the data movement. So every data movement if is a stream of we call it a stream. So a stream can be that okay, I am moving this data from MySQL to Couchbase, and this entire thing, if you have multiple instances of the Volga running, then the Volga will make sure that if one instance of Volga goes down, it gets assigned to another instance. So that
Okay.
also we have within the application. So if you are not using Nomad, but you just started 3 instances on 3 different machines, then it will take care of reassignments and making sure that the stream is continued to run.
Okay, interesting. Another, yeah, another thing actually. Okay, everything sounds absolutely great. So what I want to ask now is, what is the current state of the project? How mature is it? And if there is a web presence already? I don't know who prefers to answer.
Sorry,
Sorry,
what
what
was the last part?
asking?
So yeah, basically, I would like to know how mature is the project, and if there is a web presence already, a website or something.
Okay. So we're using it. The project is being used within Vonage,
Mhm.
and we are kind of being used in read-only fashion in production,
Mhm.
and we have a number of services using it. As the plan is going forward to add more and more services to this platform, so to speak. So we are handling some amount of traffic now, but we would be adding more going forward. I don't know what you meant by web presence.
I
So
mean, if
I
there is a
don't
website that we can
have.
check.
Okay.
No, we don't really have a website yet because I think it's more of an internal project. So we can only put a website or make it open source. So we have to go through a lot of checks from Vonage itself. So we'll see probably by the end of this year when we have a full-fledged product ready, then
Okay.
we can make a website and make it open source as well. Right now, the way we use it is we deploy it in Nomad, which is also within Vonage. So we have to get out of all these dependencies, make the entire project independent, and then push it out. So that is in the pipe, but we don't have it yet.
Okay. Okay. Is there already maybe some repository, or is it too early?
There is a repository, but it's not public. So yeah,
Okay.
it's still too early. We do have
Okay.
demo actually. Maybe we can paste the link of the demo. So if someone is just interested in using the product and to know more about it, they can directly get in touch with us and we can put them out. Probably it will
Mhm.
be easier to get permissions that okay someone wants to use it, then we can just provide okay this is the base layer and you can use it.
So to add to it, maybe that was the intention behind your question. We feel that our main point of differentiation is more about making this whole thing self-service.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So that is where I think we have put in a lot of effort.
Okay.
But in terms of what technology we use and how we do it, I mean, there are quite a few open source projects taking the same route and being successful. So from
Okay.
that point of we don't really think that what we are doing is unique in that point, but what we have done to make it self-servable, and that is the more unique thing that differentiates us from the other things, I would say.
Mm. Yeah. 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 And okay, once there will be a website or anyway a public repository, will the project have an open source license?
I mean, if it gets so, we've not had this. Honestly, we've not had this discussion yet within
Okay.
Vonage, but yeah, I mean, if it does happen, then there would be open source license, I guess.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Let us keep us posted, because if at some point there will be a public website and repository, it will be absolutely interesting to look at
Sure.
it.
If we reach that stage, I'm sure you would be one of the first few people to test it.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Uh, Also, because I think that the interesting part is what you are doing is very generic, and you have a use case for it, but other people could have different use cases and probably could contribute with
Sure.
different features that maybe you don't plan to develop yourself.
Yeah, certainly.
Um, is there apart from probably going open source at some point, or maybe not, is there a roadmap that you can share?
Sure.
Uh,
So, so in general, I can give you like a broad direction that we would want to take.
mhm.
Um, So the main thing is that, as I was trying to say earlier, we want to be enable people to think about it in the following way. So we what we would want to do is this data platform to be serverless, if you can think about it like that,
Mhm.
where you could come and register a function that you want to be executed on certain changes. So, for example, let's say when a new account is created, maybe you want to develop a new audit service
Mhm.
wherein you want to say, oh, when a new account is created, you want to audit it, like when was it created and in which region and so on.
Mhm.
So the way we see audit service is like a bunch of functions which you can register against our platform,
Okay.
where whenever a new account is created, then we would invoke this function, capture the result, and then store it in the data store of your choice or just in the messaging system, for example,
Mm.
so on and so forth. So the thing that we want to build eventually is the ability for you to decompose your application as a bunch of serverless function calls, which you can then register against our platform and then tell our platform that I want to ensure that this function is executed within X seconds or X milliseconds from the time that this data was created,
Mhm.
and then we could scale up the number of function instances or scale down the number of square instances depending on the load. So that's what we will eventually want to build.
Mm. Okay, that's great. Divya, do you want to add anything?
Um, yeah, I think that's one thing. Another thing which it's a bit in our future, but we wanted to add is like transactions across services. So basically, when we started the project, one of the problem was that moving, we had this multiple microservices architecture, and now the problem was how to move the data. So another problem which we wanted to solve is how do you do transaction between microservices. So
Mm.
that is one more thing which we wanted to add because in this, as the underlying data store is not constant, and so we have this in theory available that how we are planning to do this. So that is one more thing which we are looking forward to.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. Um, okay, so the next question is kind of a change of topic. It's mainly for Divya, but of course, Narain can also answer. Um, why do you think that there are so few women in tech and in particularly in coding and in system administration and things like that?
Um, I so I don't know, but because maybe the place where I come, so in India usually it's not. It's from the beginning. We don't have many people studying, especially women. So
Okay.
even in my place, in my school, there were like 1:2, like three ratio between boys and girls. When I went to the coaching, it was 1:2, like 50. I had, three girls in a batch of 150 boys. Then when I came to college, it continued to reduce. So somewhere people probably choose different paths. To be honest, I really don't know what is the situation in Europe and America, but that's about India. Um, but I think I've seen recently the trend is growing up more, and I've seen more and more people are more and more women are coming to tech, but I don't know how exactly it happened in previous generations.
What can be done to change the situation? I mean, the question is especially, do you have maybe suggestions for companies or teams that would like to have a more diverse team?
Yeah, I think one thing which so we have a lot of communities around now to support women, and we have a lot of communities which are specifically for women in tech. Like we have this women in tech. We had this Google developer groups specifically for women, women who code. So I think these communities support a lot of to a lot of women who wants to come but they do not get enough opportunities. Um, Another reason can be the way we see in general. So like women, they are not probably. It's more like you. It's more like not probably in a thinking, but people usually say that maybe women are not good in tech just because the numbers are low.
Mm.
So it's a general, I think, mental model which people had, which are changing now, which is changing now. So I'm hoping that it will be better and better in future.
So what I would like to add is that I think this is just a myth if that they won't be able to do it. So if
Yeah,
companies can encourage them more and also support them more during critical moments of life. So, for example, I know having a kid myself, how crazy it is when a kid is born and the kind of crazy responsibilities that are placed on the parents.
Mhm.
So, as more companies recognize and support these kind of situation, I think going forward, hopefully the situation will change more.
yeah,
Yeah.
So, for example, before I moved to London, we used to live in Sweden,
Mm.
and some of the policies there in terms of like when a kid is born, the amount of time off that you can have with pay, those kind of policies I can see clearly were supportive of these kind of thing going forward, and I could see that the participation of women in tech in Sweden are is much higher than what I've seen in other places. So, if I think it's like sufficient proof that given encouragement, then the situation can change certainly.
Mm. Yeah. 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 Definitely. Um, do you also have suggestions for young persons? I mean, women, but not necessarily women. I mean, any person who's um, starting a career in IT and belongs to some so-called minority. Do you have some suggestions to find a job more easily and have a better career?
So for me, what worked is I was always kind of I could not stay at one place. When I joined my first job, I was doing something, but then within a year or so, I got bored because it was more like maintaining a Java project. So I was not getting enough new things to learn. So then I switched, went somewhere else, and then I had this curiosity to okay, how it will feel like when you go outside India. How do people work there? So I started looking out. So one thing which helped me a lot is going to these communities. So they're meetups. So whenever you go to meetup, you meet people. That way you get more connections. You get to know more like how things works in general. You can get a lot of referrals there. So I think that is important if you are looking for a change or you are looking for this growth, you need to know that where or in what direction you can go. And once you know the direction, so let's say I decided, okay, I want to go in back-end engineer or a front-end engineer, then you can choose these meetups. Okay, these are specifically to front-end and go and meet people there and then ask them, okay, how did they reach there? So that is one thing. Another thing which I used to do is go on LinkedIn a lot and connect to people and talk to them, and then a lot of reading, I think. So these were the primary factors which can help you to grow from the stage you are right now.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Narain?
Sure, I think for the individual in question, I think you should be confident who you are and don't have to try
Mm.
and see that you have to be like the others. I think the greatest strength is in you being the individual and being happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And at the other side of the spectrum, like for the company or management inviting people into their company,
Mhm.
I think there is enough evidence in history which shows that divergence of thoughts and divergence of opinions is actually very healthy and makes the company strong, and it should be actively encouraged.
Yeah.
for you to build a company for the long term.
Yeah.
And I see this like very true from the country that I come in, which is India.
Mhm.
If you've ever been to India, you would know that there is an explosion of diversions. And having grown up there, I feel very strongly that if this is supported, it ultimately makes the company stronger. So I think there should be more encouragement from companies to allow this, and at the same time, as individuals should not feel afraid to be different from others.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Um, okay. Last topic before closing this interview. Um, Before the current situation, did you used to work remotely or in an office?
Mostly in office.
Sorry?
It was in office.
Okay. Okay. I think you're muted, Divya. I didn't hear you at least.
Hello.
Okay.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Um,
Mostly in office. We used to go to office mostly like daily on a daily basis. I
okay.
become too lazy when I'm home. But now I'm getting used to it.
Okay. And apart from all considerations about health and social life and these things that we all know, um, from a purely work point of view, was the change positive or negative?
Mm, so uh, I think it was more of a neutral. I felt that maybe when we were in office, I find some difficulties in having discussions because we used to have a lot of boards or on paper sessions. It was easy to understand. Okay, this is how things are going to work.
Mhm.
Now on video call, I find it very difficult to kind of grasp what we are discussing. Sometimes one of us just cut loose, and then it becomes difficult. So I would still prefer to go to office and work there. It also creates an so because now when home, I'm kind of working all the time because there is no you're not going to office, so most of the time it's either working or yeah sleeping. That's all. I
Okay.
would say it was more of neutral or negative kind of movie.
Okay.
Probably
Okay.
we can find out if this goes in long term. We can find out ways to like do this.
Okay. And
So
Narain, what do you
yeah,
think?
I feel that it's like a combination of both positives and negatives. Positive is that I live in a suburb of London, and being in London, it saves me 2 hours of commute time every day.
Mm,
So that is like a positive. I rather use it to do something with my family. But of course, something to improve is as Divya was saying, we used to work in office mostly, so we are more our communication, the way we do communication is more tuned to in physical communication, like drawing diagrams on whiteboard and so on and so forth. I have a feeling that given more time and experience with this, we probably would be able to jump through the hurdle. But the one definite thing which has been a bad is like as Divya was also saying, I think there's like the difference between office time and home time is not as strict as it was earlier, in the sense that at least because of the 2 hour commute time, I had a time at which I could mentally sign off from whatever I was doing at office, and then switch over to spending time with my family.
mm,
These days, I find that without that thing, I'm like almost always switched on office work, which is not so great for work-life balance. But as I said, as we spend more time more doing this, probably we'll be better at the art of doing this.
mm.
Uh, we should learn, I guess, more from people like you who probably been doing this for a longer time and have tips for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mostly work remotely almost always, and it was the same actually with several of my past employers.
Mhm.
Not all of them, because some of them actually preferred to work in office.
Okay.
Well, my personal preference is to have a bit of both. Uh, I mean, I think that people should be allowed to work from home if they prefer so, and if it is not a problem for the team. And at the same time, they should be able to go to the office every time is useful, or even if it's not really useful. Some people just want to do it, and they should be allowed.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so the last question is something that I anticipated you via email. So it's something I ask to all the persons who I'm interviewing. In this period, we have a lot of time to read because we spend a lot of time home, of course. And this is probably one of the positive things. So do you have suggestions for books to read? And I ask you to suggest one book which is related to databases, if possible, and another which is on any other topic you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're, I'll just bend your rules a little bit, and I will suggest one book which I kind of like, and one paper and one video course. Okay.
Okay.
So the book is called The Replication Theory and the Replication Systems Theory from Springer. So it is got to do mostly with replication, but it walks through a lot of other things about definitions of consistency and so on. So it was relevant for our line of work, but I guess in general it's a pretty nice read for
Okay.
people who are interested in these things. The video course is also there is professor of Carnegie Mellon University who has this database course on YouTube, which is free. His name is Andy Pavlov. You can look it up, or you look for Carnegie Mellon University Database Systems Group. You would find the video link, and he is very excited in teaching the courses, and the excitement comes through in all of his videos. It's pretty fun to watch as well as very detailed. And the third one is paper. It's called the Timely Data Flow, and it's also very technical, but it has a lot of information on how to implement a data flow and how to build systems using it.
Great. Divya?
I mostly read whatever he says.
Sorry?
I mostly read whatever Narain tells me. Like, apart
Okay.
whatever he tells me, it's very difficult to read these.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have an alternative suggestion? Like, I don't know, some
So,
video to watch or some film to watch or whatever.
so what I usually do, so whenever it tells me, okay, this is the book you need to read, so I just go to YouTube, search for explanations of chapters or some particular blog about the book, and then try to understand it. So that's what I do.
Okay.
So since Divya doesn't have suggestions, maybe you can give us some of your suggestions.
Oh, I'm totally unprepared. I would say that if I have to suggest something database related that has not been suggested until now, it's probably, I don't have a particular title, but I would say one of Chris Tate's books, because they're about the theory that's behind relational databases.
Right.
And I think they give you the right mindset in a sense. I don't take everything he says, because I think that some part of his view is kind of unpractical, but it's still a good foundation to have.
Okay.
And if I have to suggest something unrelated, well, let me look at my library.
So,
It's-
since you're Italian, I thought you would say how to make the best pasta or pizza.
Well, no, because you don't learn it with a book.
Okay,
You learn it by eating. Because if you do, you also look at which ingredients were used, and then you
right.
can try to do the same. So yeah, that is the second suggestion. Eat good pasta and try to cook it in the same way.
So, have you seen anything on YouTube that is close to what you would eat at home?
No, I don't check these kind of things honestly on YouTube, so I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
In any case, this was a great interview, I think. So thank you a lot for your time. I enjoyed it a lot. I hope to interview again at some point, announcing that Volga has gone open source. And
Yeah, thank you.
until then, stay safe, stay brilliant. I want to remind everyone that 2 weeks of databases continue. So tomorrow we will have Asia Kamsky from MongoDB. Then next week we will resume from Monday. We will have Marco Machela, which is InnoDB main architect. He works in MariaDB. Then Peter Zaitsev, founder and CEO from Percona. Richard Heap, who is SQLite creator. Konstantin Osipov, which is someone from the team of ScyllaDB. And Monty Videnius, who is the creator of MariaDB and MySQL. So again, thank you a lot for your time.
Thank you for having us, and this is a great initiative. I watched all your videos till now. Some of them were very interesting. I didn't know a lot of it. So thanks for this. I'm sure it's pretty useful for people watching your thing. So please continue doing this.
Thanks a lot for your kind words.
Thank
And
you.
keep following us next week and also
Sure.
tomorrow.
Will do. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.